What has been the contribution of your office to the economic miracle, so to speak, that the broader public, is so satisfied with the government about?
Well, law does not have such a direct connection to the economic performance of the country, but its contribution will be indirect. So, for instance, our department is in charge of the drafting of legislation, and so we take instructions from the MDAs, including the Minister of Finance and the Bank of Ghana, to refashion the laws of the country in a manner that will inure to the benefit of the people of this country, or that will ensure that economic performance, is enhanced. And so, if you take the fiscal measures that have been introduced, all the bills were drafted by the Legislative Drafting Division, and then, of course, we always advise on how the bills can be structured in a manner that will inure to the benefit of the country. And so our contribution is, limited to fashioning the laws and advising on governmental transactions, that have an impact on the economy. And then, of course, there is also the other aspect of it, which is the fact that every ministry, department, and agency is very much aware that now there cannot be any waste or wastage.
Okay.
All right. That transactions that are, fraught with a lot of overpricing will be definitely vetted. So, for instance, if you bring a transaction to my office, okay, we used to just look at the dry legal, aspects of the transaction, whether it complies with the laws of Ghana, the Constitution, statutes in force, the case law, and so on. But currently, we have taken an interest in the economics of the contracts, that I brought to the office. So, for instance, I would not, approve a contractual transaction, for instance, that has any semblance to what happened in the drip case, where you had in excess of about 70%, inflation of prices. So we do check all of those aspects, and we advise the ministries, departments, and agencies that, this could be problematic for you going down the line. And in some cases, if there's a need for me to brief His Excellency about a transaction and my concerns, I go to him directly and I talk to him, and then he will call the minister or chief executive to order. So that is how, and he keeps. So the point is that we are avoiding waste.
Good.
And the finance minister keeps mentioning that all the time, to people at the finance ministry, and then sometimes in parliament, about the fact that Ayine is making an effort to ensure that there's no wastage in the system.
We don't have the luxury to waste.
No, we don't at all.
Because our economy is in a place where you just can't afford to waste.
Not at all. Not at all. And if, I start to give you some of the details of, what I'm finding in the investigations, you realize that
we'll get there shortly.
Okay.
So much of the stability that we have seen is attributed to the Bank of Ghana and the gold boards, $1 billion in foreign exchange support since January 2025. When should Ghanaians expect the projected $21 billion from the oral? Because that's what we're told.
Well, I like the way you have characterized it, projected. That was projected, from the over 2,000, cases.
417 cases.
Yeah, cases that, were contained in the oral report. And it was a rough, back of the envelope estimate of what, is capable of being, collected. Very soon in this year, I'm sure things, will start, dripping into the government chest. With respect, money will start flowing into the government chest with respect to oral. The question whether we will be able to get exactly the 21 billion projected is one that I cannot answer with mathematical certainty at this point in time. All right, but I'm doing a great deal of work with local and foreign partners. On the local front, I have the Economic and Organized Crime Office, the EOCO, and then NIB helping me. And then I also have a special investigations team that works directly to the Attorney General. That team is a clandestine team, of investigators, very seasoned investigators who are working directly, to me. So very soon, things will, cash will start flowing into the public, kitty. So for instance, in respect of DRIP, I can say with certainty that we have been able to, working with GRA, okay, we've been able to, establish that 22 million Ghana cedis of tax, was evaded as far as the DRIP transaction was concerned.
The company appears to challenge those figures.
That is what they are saying, right? So our initial estimate of the tax evaded was 38.7 million, all right? But we do not have the power, right, to say, with exactitude that a tax has been evaded. So in July of last year, I wrote to the GRA for confirmation, all right? Then the reason why I'm saying that I'm speaking with certainty with regard to the 22 million is because GRA just last week confirmed that figure. So it doesn't matter, and the company itself wrote a letter saying that they have they were re-warehousing some of the items that were cleared, as exempt when they were not supposed to attract exemption. But I think that letter is of no consequence as far as the tax evasion is concerned, because once you import goods and you clear them into the national customs territory, right, without paying duty, when you ought to have paid the duty, then it means that you have evaded taxes.
That's
the law
different from the 2 million you had flagged.
Right, the $2 million US has also been flagged. Okay, so, and I'm going to pursue them for that $2 million because, it's very, very clear from our evidence that they were overpaid by $2 million. So I'm going to, in addition to the 22 that has been confirmed by GRA, I'm going to, pursue them for that.
But why shouldn't we take some of the explanations? J-Plan Pool, they suggest that this 2 million must have been a clerical error.
It wasn't a clerical error. It is very, very clear from the, okay, so we use the invoices, okay, the invoices. We obtained the invoices from the Ministry of Finance, from the DACF, that is the Disassembly Common Fund,
right,
and from PPA, and compared all, the invoices we received, and that figure is confirmed by all the invoices, okay, that they were overpaid by 2 million United States of American dollars. I will insist on that. I am considering either taking a civil action to recover or possibly bringing criminal prosecution, prosecution against the company and its directors. All right. So on the tax front,
that sounds like a threat. You're threatening them.
I'm not threatening.
And using the fear of criminal prosecution
no.
to get them to hurry to pay.
Look, let me say something. Let me say this. All right. I can make the evidence available to Ghanaians, and every person who looks at the evidence will, confirm that what I'm saying is not a threat. I'm just simply putting out the objective facts. So, for instance, if I make available to you now the GRA letter confirming the 22 million, and I tell you that I'm going to collect it because that is my duty to make sure that, there's accountability. So, it should not be seen as a threat to the company, all right? I can take civil action to collect it. I can also decide to prosecute them for criminal, misconduct.
Right.
Yes.
So now we understand that how you contribute to the economy.
Apart from that, we are doing offshore investigations. So I have foreign asset recovery companies, okay, or personnel that are helping me, experts that are helping me to trace assets abroad.
Okay.
Yeah. So we are doing that.
And you do them simultaneously with your investigations?
We are doing them simultaneously with our investigations.
Great. So part of what I understand from you is that, for example, when we mentioned the Gold Board for Praise,
yes,
that was legislation that you midwifed.
That is so.
To assist them to be able to be where they are.
So
sometimes it's not direct.
Yeah.
as in the contribution. But that sounds like a direct contribution.
Well, so it will, you cannot, if the law is operationalized, efficiently and effectively, okay, then it makes a direct contribution.
That's right.
But our contribution is to fashion the law in a way that will make it work and produce benefits for the people of the country.
And as we get ready to get into some detail in oral, if you're just joining us, this is the Attorney General of the Republic of Ghana, who is gladly, indulging us because his attitude also has been that he wants to be open and frank and accountable to the people of the Republic. Dominic Akuritinga, Ayine, he is answering some of your questions. And I realize that as we put out the flyer, many of you, your concerns had to do with oral. There is more to what they have to do than oral, but we'll take some time on oral. Critics say that you are aggressively pursuing opponents to recover loot, while at the same time, you are freeing individuals who are associated with the NDC. Do you regret your early decisions involving, nollie prosequi filings and the famous 60% plea bargains?
No, I don't. And Samson, you've known me for many years. If I don't believe in something, I wouldn't do it. And when I came into office, I did an objective professional assessment of all the pending cases. And remember, I keep reminding people that I was involved on the other side as defense attorney, right? If I didn't believe in the innocence of my clients, I would not, in some cases, I would not have, participated in, as part of their defense team, okay? So I had an insider view of most of the things that happened. So for instance, you take, Sagleme, okay? Sagleme, by all standards, was poorly investigated, all right? And the charges were poorly thought through. I'm saying this with all due respect to the people who drafted the charges, to the, state attorneys who were involved. I believe in their professionalism and I respect, their knowledge of criminal law a lot, all right? In fact, some of them are better than I am when it comes to criminal law. But I did an objective assessment. And so I give the Sagleme case as an example. Now, if you look at the case, they were talking about $200 million, all right, of funds, that were misused or lost to the state as a result of the actions of the persons who were charged, including my then client, Collins Dowda, all right? Well, we did an assessment of it. Collins Dowda was charged with causing financial loss to the tune of $200 million. But Collins Dowda was in the ministry for a very short period. At the time that he was leaving, only $94 million had been expended. Okay, so, something tell me, by what stretch of imagination can you charge a person like that with, with causing financial loss to the tune of $200 million? Except to say that maybe his actions that, he took in office triggered the entire loss, all right? If you cannot directly attribute the entire loss to him, there was no point charging him with causing financial loss to the tune of $200 million. But that wasn't even, as bad as saying that, he issued false certificates, okay? A minister does not issue IPCs, interim payment certificates, all right? The interim payment certificates are, issued by the consultants who go to the ground, assess the work done, all right, value it, and they say, look, this is how much, the state ought to pay to this person. Yeah, and then they are the ones who then write to the minister, and the minister just writes to Minister of Finance to say that, look, this IPC has been presented, please go ahead and pay. So unless they are saying that the minister ought not to have taken the advice of the consultants, okay, then you cannot attribute the false character of the IPCs, all right, to the minister, okay? So I did an objective assessment of
the minister
all
has supervision.
Yeah, you have ministerial responsibility, right, for your sector.
That's right.
Right. But when it comes to, technical matters, such as, a construction project, you have technical people working on and advising the minister. So I don't know by what means a minister is going to be able to say that this IPC ought not to be paid because it is false. I mean that it does not reflect what is on the ground. When you have AESL, a government, a designated or a entity that does the professional work of consulting on government construction
Ultimate
projects.
responsibility, the buck stops with you. If you have to do due diligence to ensure that some wrong does not occasion us loss, and you fail, you should take the responsibility for it.
Well, I do concede that you should take responsibility for it, all right? But, criminal liability is specific. I mean, can you actually say that the intent is attributable to the minister when you say that the certificate is false, right? What about the person who issued the certificate? Why were they not being prosecuted, as a result of, the determination by the then Attorney General that these certificates were false, all right? So the point I'm making is that I did an objective assessment of all these cases. And of course, if you take, Cocoa Board, the Opuni trial, I mean, as a lawyer, I'm sure you were following it. There was, reasonable doubt, a lot of doubt as to whether or not, right, the persons who were standing the trial were actually, criminally liable.
The question people have asked is, why don't you leave that decision to the courts?
Well, if I have assessed a matter, okay, and I have come to the professional opinion that this ought not to have gone to trial in the first place, there's no point wasting the state's resources in conducting a trial when I know that down the line, all right, the state is going to lose. That will be reckless. That will be professionally, and in fact, it will be unethical on my part to assess a matter, come to the determination that there is reasonable doubt, the evidence doesn't stand up, and then I say, okay, you know what, just so that I satisfy, the public, let this, continue. No Attorney General should be conducting himself or herself in that way.
The rules of ethics bind you in that regard.
Yes.
That even when you see that there is exculpating evidence,
I have to turn
some
it over,
form of evidence that will lead to the person you are accusing being freed, you should let them have it.
Yeah, I will have to turn it over to them.
Right. Nonetheless, there was loss, and the case is now gone forever.
Well, okay, so which one are you talking about?
Sagleme.
In the case of
Sagleme.
Sagleme.
Yes.
Okay, so the loss was actually estimated by the then Attorney General at 200 million, right? What they did not do, which is also very important, was to take a value of the built environment. That was never done. Okay, so it isn't as if the entire 200 million was not spent, profitably towards the project, right? Buildings were erected, the glazing was done. In fact, most of them were completed, road network, electricity and everything, all right? A diligent investigator, a diligent prosecutor ought first of all to have valued the built environment and then come to a determination as to how much was actually spent. Then you can say that if it falls short of the 200 million, then you say, okay, so out of the 200 million, only 50 million was spent on the built environment. 150 million was lost to the state. And so we want to recover that, want to prosecute people for that. And you have to deal with it with specificity. So the consultants, and persons who were responsible for, the construction and so on and so forth, like, the contractor will all have to, take responsibility for it. Okay, so yes, the case has been, terminated. Currently, the Works and Housing Minister is doing some work with respect to Sagleme, all right? I had asked that they should do value for money, and if they do the value for money and any loss has been caused, we will take it up from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting to know. You are still here on Newsfile. This edition we started at 8 a.m. and we are here with the Attorney General and Minister for Justice. So you speak about professionally, if you see that the charges can't stick, you will pull the brakes.
The brakes, yeah.
How about those matters where, like Kwabena Dufo, you know, the banking crisis issues, where you agree to take a 60%, you know, and let them go? People have questioned that.
Yes.
And that is bias. It is simply because you cannot be seen to prosecute your own. Like Collins Dada, like Kwabena Dufo, you just can't prosecute them.
That is not so. You see, the banking sector cases were being treated differently, right, by me. Because I took the view that despite the weak nature of the charges, okay, so for instance, I'll give you an example. If you say that financial loss has been caused by a bank because the bank took liquidity support from the Bank of Ghana, and that liquidity support, you know, was misapplied, okay, how was it misapplied? Now, if you take banks generally, right, banks are in the business of taking risk. They lend, you know, and sometimes those who take the loans default, probably not due to anything, I mean, any fault of theirs. They may default because the business has gone bust and so on and so forth, all right? So if you want to criminalize the banks on account of liquidity support, then I am sure all these, I mean, banks that we have in the system, every one of them will go to jail, all right? It doesn't make sense for you to say that because liquidity support was given, all right, and they did not apply it in the manner that you thought they ought to have applied it. Okay, so in the case of the Dufos, right, it wasn't the case that they stole the money. It wasn't the case that they pocketed the money. There was no evidence on file that, you know, I mean, they did anything that personally benefited them. In fact, they were not charged with, stealing and so on and so forth. Okay, so what we were looking at was the negligence on their part, maybe the fictitious entries into their books so that the books were good, so that Bank of Ghana will give them more money to, you know, continue to be a bank and so on and so forth. Okay, so at the end of the day, what I then said was that for all the banking cases, okay, I mean, I'd assessed them. The evidence was, also weak, just like, you know, the rest of the cases. But I said to myself that, look, people's, savings were lost, all right? Yes, they have to take responsibility somewhat for all of that. I mean, the civil matter was also, in court at the time.
That's right.
Okay, so I took the view that, look, if, I have to withdraw the charges, okay, then you have to, commit to bringing assets worth 60% of what was, filed in the criminal matter. That was, and I made